Hi, everybody. So I am going to show you a presentation that I did late last year, late 2019, November 2019, to be most precise about it. And this presentation really gives you a sense of what 2020 has to offer. Now, I am recording this on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day on 2020, as a little preview of what's to come online in the coming days. I'm going to start putting these online. So anyway, this is a very fun little PowerPoint, and I hope you enjoy it. Basically, I am going to unpack some of the big astrology. Now, there's one thing I'm going to leave out, Saturn in Aquarius, which I'm going to save for another presentation. But this will give you a little sense. So we're 2020, we're in the thick of it now. Some of this is going to make more sense now, actually, than it did back in November. And you can see this is a GIF from Planet of the Apes. And it really kind of gives the feel of what we're experiencing right now. Okay, you can record this if you would like. Just be sure to give me some credit. Thank you. Okay, what we're seeing this year is a Capricorn domination. And what that means is we are experiencing a whole bunch of planets in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn themes are going to continue to be dominant through the year, although we will get a little bit of a break when Saturn moves into Aquarius. There will still be several planets in Capricorn. Capricorn is all about hard work and integrity, pragmatism, morality, tradition and convention, conservatism and realism. Interestingly, all of these people in the Trump administration, past and present, are Capricorns, which I think is significant. I think it's significant because they are part of the structure that we are beginning to see now crumble. And this is not politics, this is really astrology. Okay, so just to give you a clear picture of what Capricorn energy is not Melissa Manchester, Melissa McCarthy in this picture, more like Jason Bateman. Okay. First, we had Pluto in Capricorn. Now, Pluto is really far from Earth. It moves really slowly, and it has been in the sign of Capricorn since February 2008. It's going to be there all the way through 2024. But this Pluto in Capricorn has more heft and more influence in 2020 because of the other planets that are cozying up to it right now. So what we saw when Pluto shifted into Capricorn, as a lot of you will remember, we had a crash. Now we just had another one, and I'm going to explain that a little bit later in the presentation. But Pluto is about the dark side. It's the shadow side of the culture. It is all things that are hidden, all things that need to be brought into the light. It is pretty dark. It can get very violent. It can get very macabre. And we saw a lot of that, in the early part of the Trump presidency. Now, what we had that sort of amplified this Pluto energy was Saturn moving into Capricorn as well. Back in December of 2017, Saturn moved into this place, and it's going to hang out there all the way. Well, we'll get a little bit of a break starting on March 22nd when Saturn moves into Aquarius, but it'll back into Capricorn for the last quarter of the year and then finally leave. So Saturn usually spends about 2.5 to 3 years in one sign. What you see with Saturn in Capricorn, Saturn represents the structure of our lives, right? It represents all of the areas that we need rigidity, that we need some clear guidance, that we need sort of tests of the foundations of things that we are dealing with in our lives. When Saturn moved into Capricorn, all of that testing, all of that hardship, all of that struggle moved into areas around the structure of our government. So Capricorn really does rule things like systems like the government, like the healthcare system. So we're seeing, we saw some of that early on. This would have been back in 2019, late 2018, but we're seeing 2020, this manifest in a new way. We're seeing this with what is probably going to be the breakdown of our healthcare system. Okay, so what we got in late 2019 and all through 2020 is Jupiter now joining that Saturn and that Pluto in Capricorn. And Jupiter is really about expansion. It exaggerates whatever it touches in your chart and whatever it is affecting in the sky. Just to give you a little sense of Jupiter in Sagittarius, which we had from 2018 to 2019, versus Jupiter in Capricorn. Okay, so Jupiter in Sag, lots of fun, right? Lots of expansion, lots of excess, even, right? Jupiter in Capricorn, a lot different. It's really more of a Marie Kondo kind of vibe. Jupiter in Sag, it's big, it's body, it is excessive. Jupiter in Capricorn, not so much. Jupiter in Sag, Jupiter in Capricorn. Okay, so you get the vibe, right? Jupiter in Capricorn brings to this already collection of intense Capricorn energy. And we have Jupiter in Capricorn all year long. It's going to be playing a very important role when we get to April. Okay, so Jupiter in Capricorn is, or Jupiter in general, describes where growth happens. It describes the nature of expansion in your life during that year. It describes the luck, the character of the luck, how luck shows up in your life. It also, now in Capricorn, it's really a little bit less fun, I have to say, than Jupiter in Sag. It's really a time to save your money, to get more mature, to really, master that adulting thing in your life, and to make plans that last. And we're really seeing why now. I think that's why this presentation to me is feeling a lot more relevant even than it did last November. So Jupiter in Capricorn, it's all about the hard work, just like Saturn, just like Pluto. It's all about sobering up. Okay, we're really experiencing that now, and creating healthy boundaries. Well, we have more healthy boundaries now than I think we've ever had in our lives as a globe with this quarantine. Now, the good thing about astrology is, yes, it will bring tests, but there is also a gift. There's also a lesson. There is also some wisdom that comes from this. And Jupiter in Capricorn is a very well, they call it a benefic in astrology. It is considered, a generous energy. And the gifts in this case are going to teach you how to make good choices, what the benefits of your good choices are, what the benefits of integrity and security and boundaries are, right? Okay, so that brings us to the Capricorn collision. Now, we had one of these in January, and we're going to have another one in April, and then a third one in June. These are very intense moments. Now, in January, we now know is when the coronavirus came to the United States. And in April, we are probably going to see that spike happening of there's a lot of talk about flattening the curve. We are probably not going to get there because the United States just has not been as proactive as it could have been. So I would predict that when we get to the last week of March, or first week of April, we're going to see that spike. We're going to see people really getting, irrefutable evidence of the seriousness of the situation. Now, does this mean that that's the end of the world? No, it just means that things are going to get a little more intense before they get better. And this guy's going to be happy. Yeah, it's dark. It's dark. I will say that. We don't want to sugarcoat this. I don't want to cultivate more fear, because I do think, and I'm going to present in another presentation, I'm going to talk about Saturn in Aquarius and what that means. Saturn in Aquarius is going to bring some new fresh air to the situation, some oxygen into the room. Okay, but let's talk about what all of this stuff is going to mean as we move into April. Major redistribution of power. We're already seeing that. I think it's interesting that we haven't heard from Russia. Russia is really not in the headlines right now. What the hell are they doing? Are they getting overrun with this? China is showing up as a much more organized, and it is a very Virgo nation, much more organized around this crisis than really anyone. Although they did let it out of the bag, they got their shit together pretty quickly. World altering changes, that goes without saying. We're very much there. Historic tests of integrity and resilience, definitely there now. Moral quandary for those in authority. We're seeing that now. We're seeing that now with the doctors who are having to make life or death decisions in Italy that are crushing, that are heartbreaking. They are having to decide who lives and who dies based on, you know, philosophical questions, really. I mean, there's just not enough. There's just not enough ventilators. There's just not enough supplies. There's just not enough people to help keep these people alive with the coronavirus. So it's just very interesting how, to me, and very deeply, deeply heartbreaking, how this astrology that we had in late November is now manifesting in really the worst case scenario. None of us could have ever expected this to happen. Okay, so what this means for you personally, obviously, we're all shifting our goals. We are all sort of downsizing our expectations at this point. We're all figuring out, oh, okay, what I thought this year was going to mean for me is going to look much different. This is especially true for my friends in Nashville. Now, it is a dark time, but with Jupiter in Capricorn and it making a conjunction to Pluto in Capricorn, those of us who are solopreneurs, who are mompreneurs, who are working on our own out here, it's actually a really fruitful moment for us to pivot quickly. And you can usually do that when you work on your own, and use this time to expand our influence in new ways, in more inventive ways, in ways that really align better with your integrity, frankly. I mean, I think that's what this time is teaching us, is that we are really, we cannot phone it in. We have to be the best selves that we can be. And this is our opportunity to do that, to help each other. Okay. And so some of you, I would say the Capricorns in the bunch, are going to start to see, but all of us, the hard work. If you have been aligning with your integrity since that Saturn shift into Capricorn in 2017, you will start to see things pay off for you. It's going to look different than you thought. It's probably not going to be in the same form that you expected, but you will see that integrity pay off in the long run. Okay. So usually in a live format, I would use this moment to ask questions if you have any questions, but we're going to continue on. Now, we've just come out of a Mercury retrograde. We are still technically in the retrograde shadow because Mercury is moving through the degrees of Pisces that it was. It's hard to concentrate looking at Miss Piggy. I'm sorry to move this. Pisces, Mercury in Pisces is, it's moving through those degrees that it was in during the retrograde. And by the time we get to March 30th, it will be out of its shadow. So we're still unpacking a lot of that Mercury retrograde from February 16th to March 9th. We're still dealing with the material that came up during that time. And it's still it's a little foggy. We are still dealing with, groping for some clarity. I mean, we're getting more clarity now than we had in February, but it probably won't be until Mercury clears the sign of Pisces and moves on into Aries in April 11th, that we start to see what's really going on. Okay. So, as you know, Mercury retrogrades, if you don't know, are generally times for a little bit of confusion, a little bit of misunderstanding. Now, with the retrogrades this year, Mercury retrogrades, they're all in water signs for the most part. And that means that the Mercury retrograde times can be a very emotional period for us. Water signs are generally all about the feelings, being in your feelings, um, acting out of the emotion from not necessarily the intellect. So that's probably what you experienced in February, March. We're going to have a couple more opportunities with that. Just know that it's not the best time to try and make clean breaks, not the best time to make complicated travel plans. In fact, so many of us who made travel plans in February are finding that those are not going to work out right now. Okay, moving on here. So the good aspects of the Mercury retrograde in Pisces really was about opening a portal to that higher self, to that more compassionate, loving kindness that's available to us all. Pisces is the sign of surrender. It's the sign of oneness. And so we could still be, we still have a lot of access to that energy right now. You know, meditation can still be very helpful to get us through this time. Being mindful of, um, how we treat one another, how we honor one another with kindness. Those are things that can be very helpful as we go through this difficult time right now. Okay, so again, I'm going to, starting next week, I am going to go into depth about Saturn and Aquarius. But right now, I want to just touch on the yearly themes for each sign. Aries, Libra, we're going to talk about these in pairs because these are polar. I'm going to talk about how these themes are affecting the polar signs. Aries is on one side, Libra is on the other. Family and career become themes. The work-home balance, we're really dealing with that now. Setting necessary boundaries with family, with work, reckoning with childhood issues and how those affect your reputation, your career, your professional goals. And hard work, earning rewards now. Any difficult, deep psyche kind of work that you're doing as well can really start to pay off this year. Okay. Cancer and Capricorn, they have really been in the soup for the last couple of years, thanks to a series of eclipses that coincided with all this Capricorn energy. Identity and partnership have been their big themes, the needs of self versus the needs of the other, shifting priorities in relationship, letting go of relationships that are not working anymore, and cultivating integrity in how you do relationship and how you assert your individuality. Taurus and Scorpio has really been more in the perspective. It's been in the learning and teaching mode. You're learning new ways of looking at the world. You may have shifted your belief system drastically in the last few years. And long-term travel, long-distance travel, foreign experiences may have been a part of this. But it's definitely been that critical thinking, that ability to shift your own paradigm that will be rewarded. Leo and Aquarius, those have been about routines and surrender and the balance of both of those, looking at self-care versus self-sacrifice, creating new work structures, creating boundaries on the job, sustainable structures at work have been very important, and healthy routines. There may have been a health crisis that had to be addressed, and in the addressing of that health crisis, you may have needed to create new ways of nourishing yourself, new ways of eating, new ways of exercising, that kind of thing. Gemini and Sagittarius, it has been more about money and intimacy, more about shared income versus earned income, and healing issues around self-worth. The Buddhist mindset of non-attachment, really looking at what do I own? What do I really need? How much of this do I really need? Is this enough? And looking at what it would be to have a really structured budget, have a real hefty savings account for once. Virgo and Pisces, it's been about fun and friendship. really standing out versus being part of your own tribe. Working hard at your goals, setting some new goals that are much more sustainable, much more in line with your integrity. But setting some plans that feel manageable and cultivating some creative freedom as well. This is where, being self-expressive is really where Pisces Virgo get rewarded this year, and finding ways to share that creativity with your community. Okay, now getting to the $1 million question. What does this mean for Donald Trump? Okay, this is a good indicator. I mean, and this makes a lot of sense now, even more than it did in November. So this is Donald Trump's chart. There is some argument around his birth time, but this is generally the one that that gets used quite a bit. And what we see here is that lineup of Capricorn energies just hammering away at a quite vulnerable place in his chart, this Saturn Venus, and the ruler of his sun, Mercury. What we can expect is he's probably getting hammered with financial issues right about now. And a lot of other things. We've seen over the last few months a revelation around foreign deals. We have also seen more corruption revealed. It hasn't really seemed to inhibit his popularity too much up until this point. Now, we can expect some family dramas, and he's going to start to find his popularity tanking. Not that anybody has, I don't know, maybe they are doing polls. We haven't seen any polls lately. But this is not going to be the best year for Donald Trump. And the reason is that these planets hammering away at this vulnerable place in his chart, these are the dates when those are exact hits. And this is a lot of exact hits. Now, November is not mentioned here, but we do see something coming up October 21st, October 4th. This could be that October surprise that affects the election. I don't know. I'm not really calling the election for or against Donald Trump. For a long time, it looked like his chart was pretty strong after the election. It seems hard to imagine that he's going to survive the disaster of this coronavirus, but you never know. The guy is like Teflon. So one of the things that we are looking at election day 2020, a Mercury retrograde and a Mars retrograde. Not going to be easy. Not going to be an easy election. Now, the good news is, I feel like this is the light at the end of the tunnel. It's not like everything is perfect, right? But Jupiter and Saturn leave Capricorn and move into Aquarius together. Okay, Jupiter will, for the first time, move into Aquarius. Saturn is basically going back into Aquarius after a little bit of time it's going to spend there this summer, which again, I'm going to talk about in another presentation in detail. But this is, what some astrologers are saying is the beginning, the real beginning of the Aquarian age that they sang about in the 60s is happening, coming 2021. That'd be awesome. I hope it is true. It would be the first time in 700 years that we see the shift of Jupiter-Saturn into a new place, a new element. It is a time of great, enormous change in our consciousness, in our structures as a country, and even in how we experience our connection to the rest of the world. This is a significant long-term shift. And if you think about it, after the coronavirus, it's unlikely that things will ever be the same, right? I mean, it's just going to change everything. We are going to have a more progressive society. Now, if that means politically progressive, I don't know. I feel like it does mean that. I feel like we're coming into this place, kind of like what we did in the 30s when we had the New Deal, where the government just realized that these are such desperate times, we have to create different systems, right? That will help the whole and not just those privileged few. So it is going to be a time of major reform, and in the best case scenario, that will benefit everyone. So what does this mean for you? Now, I am going to be doing some individual readings for the signs on in the coming weeks. I mean, in the coming days, probably next week, but please stay tuned for that. And thank you so much for watching all the way through. I would love to hear from you. I'm on Instagram. And until next time, see ya. Have a good, take care, all of that stuff.